Okay, let's get started with the fourth installment of this series of tutorials on using Microsoft Excel. This one should be pretty basic and also hopefully pretty short. What we're going to do is just talk about how to sort of arrange your worksheet. How to kind of, now that we've learned how to format a little bit, how to kind of change the look and feel by changing the cell sizes and so on and so forth. So one of the first things we want to talk about is row and column size. Row sizes, that's basically how tall each row is. The kind of automatic setting for those is usually fine. But one thing that comes in handy is knowing how to control the width of a column. So there are a number of ways of being able to do that. One, if you select a column and then hover your cursor right over the gap between the next column, you can click, and if you see that little sort of move to the right, move to the left symbol, you can click on that and bring that to where you need it to be, right? If you double click on that, what that does is that expands that column to the width that's required to fit the longest piece of information in that cell. And since we have a huge title in here, that is causing that trouble. So when we pull this back, you can see that the first cell with all that text just sort of automatically overflows, right? You can actually do that with multiple columns too. If you select multiple columns and then double click on that division or move to the right, move to the left symbol, you can see that what will happen is every cell will snap to the width it needs to be to fit the longest piece of content in that column. Right? Now that doesn't always make for a pleasant or easy to read spreadsheet. So there are other ways you can do this too. So now that you have these columns selected, you can actually go up here to Format and go to Column and hit Width, and you can enter that numerically. So I'm going to start off with 20 and see where that takes me. And that's actually pretty good. If I were to change that to, say, 15, let's see what happens. Format, column, width, 15. Then you can see that we're starting to crop out a little information in here. But we can also format for that. If we wanted to change that, we can go up here and select these cells, go back to our Format Cells option, which is a Command 1, and we can actually go to Alignment and change this to Wrap Text. And that way, you'll see what happens. The text will wrap in those cells and they won't be cut off anymore. So that's actually pretty helpful. Another thing I want to talk to you about is freezing panes, right? So if we look at all of these cells, some of these or all of these columns, some of these columns look somewhat similar. You know, these are numbers in the hundreds, these are numbers in the hundreds of thousands, and these are numbers getting up into the millions, right? So if we were to imagine that this column or this information was hundreds of records long and we scrolled down, we would lose the reference to that header information up here. So I might not be able to recognize what this column was referring to or this column was referring to. So let me explain to you how we can fix that. So it's pretty easy. What we want to do is select the cell above and to the right of where we want to freeze, and then we can go under Window and go to Freeze Panes. Okay? And once we do that, you can see that it freezes everything above that one cell and allows it to stay in position while we scroll through that. All right. Now, if we had done that in a different location, let me show you how that would work. We would go to Window, Unfreeze Panes. And now if we go over a cell and do that again, Window, Freeze Panes, then not only can I scroll up and down, I can actually scroll right and left and retain some identifier information in this first column or in as many columns as I want, depending on where I initiate my freeze panes. So I think that's actually pretty helpful, especially when you're dealing with a huge spreadsheet like you might get from the census or something like that. The last thing for this tutorial is actually pretty handy for a lot of different reasons. As soon as you get to a point where you're dealing with a lot of tabular data, meaning information laid out in a grid like this, sometimes you want the grid to be pointed in the different direction, right? So instead of dates being along the y-axis, you would want dates to be along the x-axis, right? Different charts will read differently that way. So a pie chart will look totally different depending on which axis you have the information lined on. So if we wanted to do that, there's a quick way of doing it here in Excel. What we want to do is select the information. Let's just say it's this selection of cells right here, and we're going to copy that with a Command C, all right? And that puts this little marquee around everything. Then we're going to come down here and select a cell to begin our paste in, right? So instead of just hitting paste, I'm going to go up here and go to Edit Paste Special, right? And then we get this whole big Paste Special menu. And what we're going to do here is basically just come down to the bottom and click on Transpose and hit OK. And you can see that this information is now rotated 90 degrees and we see it on a different axis. This is one of those things that's really very useful once you start, like I said, working with a lot of tabular data. And with that, I think we're done with part 4. So again, thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon.